I once thought that being a good wife was an achievement, something to be proud of, the way people are proud of careers, titles, retirement parties. But being a good wife, in the way my generation understood it, meant one thing: erasing yourself, becoming so good at serving someone else's life that you forget your own. I'm 83 years old. In a few months, my kidneys will fail, or my heart, or something else. The doctors use careful words. But I'm no longer afraid of direct ones. I'm dying, not today, but soon, and before it happens, I want to say out loud what I kept silent for 57 years. My husband was a good man. Everyone said so. His mother, my mother, the neighbors, the pastor, my own children, everyone who ever stood in our kitchen, looked at me afterward and said the same thing: "You're a lucky woman." And I smiled. Every time I nodded and said, "Yes, I know." But here's the truth I carried for 57 years, through 2 pregnancies, 3 houses, 1 funeral, and 10,000 dinners. Nobody ever asked me if he was good to me. They asked about him. How is he? How's his health? Does he like the new car? They asked me about his life, as if I were his secretary, as if my only function was to report on his condition. And not once, not one single time, in 57 years, did anyone sit across from me and say, "But how are you? Are you happy? Does he see you?" And the worst part, I never asked myself either. I married Harold in 1967. I was 26. He was 29. He worked for the electric company. Steady job, good pension. He wore clean shirts, showed up on time, and never raised his voice in front of other people. We bought a house. Small, white, 2 bedrooms. We raised 2 children, Michael and Diane. They went to school, graduated, found jobs, moved away. Harold retired at 62 with a full pension and a plaque from the company. On paper, we had a perfect life, a marriage that lasted, children who turned out fine, a house that was paid off, no scandal, no divorce. Everyone pointed to us as proof that marriage works, that if you just stay, just hold on, it all works out. But I need to tell you what was behind that paper, because inside it didn't feel perfect. It felt like slowly going numb, year after year, until you can't even remember what feeling something was like. Harold was not a bad man. He didn't drink, he didn't cheat, he didn't break things, or slam doors, or disappear for days. He just wasn't there. Even when he was sitting right next to me, even when we were in the same room, at the same table, in the same bed, he was somewhere else, somewhere I couldn't reach. He came home from work every day at 5:15, took off his boots, sat at the table, ate, said thank you, went to the living room, watched television until 9:30, went to bed. That was Monday. That was also Tuesday and Wednesday and every day for 57 years. I used to try in the beginning. I'd ask how his day was. He'd say, fine. I'd ask what happened. He'd say, nothing much. After a while, I stopped asking, and he never noticed that I stopped. I cooked 3 meals a day for decades, organized the holidays, wrapped the gifts, remembered every birthday, every anniversary, every doctor's appointment. I managed everything, and Harold let me. Not because he was cruel, because it simply never occurred to him that any of it was hard, that I might want someone to say, sit down, I'll handle dinner tonight. in 57 years. He never once cooked me a meal, never once brought me flowers, a book, a cup of tea, just because he was thinking of me, and I accepted all of it because everyone told me I was lucky. The turning point came when I was 68. I found a lump left side. I went to the doctor alone because Harold had a meeting at the lodge, and I didn't want to bother him. I waited 2 weeks for results. I didn't tell Harold, didn't tell the children. I sat in that house, staring at the walls, wondering if I was dying, and I realized something that made me go cold. If I died, the thing I feared most was not death. I was afraid of dying without ever having been truly known by another person. Harold would mourn me. The children would grieve, but they would mourn the woman who cooked and cleaned and held everything together. They would miss the function, not the person, and that would be my entire legacy, not what I thought, not what I dreamed, only what I did for others. The tests came back clear, not cancer. I sat in the parking lot and cried for 20 minutes, not from relief, from the realization that I had been given more time, and I had no idea what to do with it, because I had never lived for myself, not one single day. I went from my parents' house to Harold's house, from being a daughter to being a wife, and somewhere in between. The person I actually was, the girl who wrote poems in a notebook, who wanted to see Paris, who laughed so loud her mother told her to be quieter. That person disappeared. I lost her the way you lose a pen. You set it down somewhere, you forget where, and by the time you look for it, it's been gone so long. You can't even remember what color it was. Here is what sits in my chest, like a stone. I wasn't living, I was maintaining a house, a marriage, a family, an image, the idea that everything was fine, because Harold was a good man, and I was a good wife, and that was supposed to be enough, but it wasn't enough, never was, and I knew at 30, at 40, at 50, but every time I told myself the same lie. I'll deal with this later. There's time. Nothing ever settled down. There was always the next dinner, the next shirt, the next year to survive. And the later I kept promising myself never came. And now I'm 83, and later is almost gone. Harold got a plaque when he retired. 35 years of service. Everyone clapped. I got nothing. 57 years of service, and the only recognition I ever received was a Mother's Day card in someone else's handwriting, because Diane bought it on the way over, and Harold just signed his name. Harold was praised for showing up. I was taken for granted, for holding everything together. And the worst part, I participated. I built my own cage, painted it nice colors, and told everyone who walked by that I was happy inside. I want to tell you about regrets. Not grand ones, small ones. The kind that sit quietly in a corner and grow heavier every year. I regret not going to Paris. I had a picture torn from a magazine, the Eiffel Tower at night, taped inside a kitchen cabinet where no one could see. I looked at it every morning while I made coffee for 30 years. Harold never once asked me where I wanted to go. We went to his brother's house in Michigan every summer. 22 years. I never once said I didn't want to go. I just went. I regret not calling my mother more before she died. We talked every Sunday, but I was always half listening, and now I would give everything for one more call where I just sat and listened. I regret not telling Diane the truth. When she got engaged, her fiancé was just like Harold. Quiet, steady, good on paper. I watched her walk toward the same life I had lived, and I said nothing. I should have taken her hand and said, "Make sure he sees you, not your cooking. You. Make sure he reaches for your hand when no one is watching." I didn't say it, because saying it would have meant admitting what my own marriage was. Diane is 51 now. She calls on Sundays. She sounds tired. She sounds the way I sounded at 51, and I hear myself in her voice, and I want to scream. But I don't, because I'm 83, and I'm still a good woman who doesn't make a scene. If you strip away everything, the house, the money, the routine, what actually matters? I know it sounds obvious, but obvious things are the ones we ignore the longest. People, not as obligations, as living beings you sit with and let see you. Time, not as a resource, as a thing that will end. The only thing you cannot get back. Presence, being actually here, looking at the person in front of you and thinking, this is happening now, and I am here. When I was young, I thought if I checked all the boxes, happiness would come as a reward, like a paycheck. It doesn't work that way. You can check every box and still arrive at 83 with nothing but a clean house and a quiet regret that fills every room. I want to ask you something, and I don't want you to answer me. I want you to answer yourself. If you died tomorrow, quietly, in your sleep, would the person next to you know who you really are? Not the version that cooks and cleans, the real one, the one with the fears and the dreams and the picture of Paris inside a cabinet. Do they know that person, Iki? And if not, what are you waiting for, Kate? If I could sit across from myself at 26, I would say, stop performing. Nobody gives you a prize for it. Nobody even notices. Stop swallowing your words. What you don't say settles inside you like sediment, layer after layer, until you can't breathe. Stop waiting for permission to want something. You are allowed to want things that have nothing to do with anyone else. Start speaking, even if your voice shakes. Say, I'm lonely. Say, this isn't enough. Say it before 30 years pass, and you forget what enough even feels like. And stop thinking there's time. There isn't. There is never as much as you think. I'm 83. Harold is gone. The house is quiet, and I sit by the window every morning with my coffee, looking at Harold's maple tree, and I think I am more at peace now, alone, than I ever was in 57 years of marriage. That is not a victory. It is just the truth. And at 83, the truth is all I have left. I'm not angry at Harold, not angry at my mother, at the neighbors, at the world that told me to stay. I'm only angry at the years, at the way they passed, quietly, obediently, one after another, while I stood in that kitchen, telling myself it was enough. So if you're sitting somewhere right now, in a quiet house, next to a good person, and something inside you is whispering that it isn't enough, listen. Please, listen before you're 83 and the only person left to hear you is yourself.